and welcome to this practice WAD, E58A meteor-application-template-react. So what we're going to do for this WAD is fool around with this template and add a simple capability to it. We're going to add the ability to remove items, something that's unfortunately missing from the template. And so when we're done with this, what's going to happen is the list stuff page in Meteor Application Template is going to have a new column called Remove. There's going to be a little icon in there. And if you click it, that row will be removed from the table and the associated item, obviously from the collection. So that's not hard to do, it turns out, but it's going to be a great way to help you kind of dig into the code and also help you dig into understanding Meteor. I know that you're still probably fairly confused about Meteor, and you'll still probably be a little confused about Meteor after you finish this WAD, but the only way to get unconfused is to just kind of push yourself through these kinds of standard operations and enhancements, and I'm hoping that as time goes on, things will start to get clear. Okay, so the first thing to do before we start the WAD is you want to familiarize yourself with the template. So if you haven't already, you should go through and really read all this. I'm not going to read it to you right now because actually I wrote it all, so I know it, but it's important things for you to skim through, and each time you look at it, I think a little bit more of things will make sense. The other thing to do, if you haven't done it already, is to look through all of these or watch all of these 5 screencasts. It's about 80 minutes worth of video. That's a really good use of an hour of your time in terms of learning about Meteor. But I will say that watching all 80 minutes at once, not recommended. Hard to keep focused on this kind of technical content for an entire 80 minutes. So that's why I'd say, the 5-minute one, that should be easy, and then maybe watch the data and accounts one for 15 minutes, then take a little break, go do something else for an hour, then maybe come back and watch 1 or 2 more, and then you can finish it off. And that's kind of a better way, I think, to actually, assimilate that material, okay? Next thing you're going to do is you're going to install the template, okay? And what that means, basically, is making a new repo, a new application that's based upon the files. And GitHub now has a pretty nice facility for doing that. You can designate a repo as a template, which I did for this repo, and then that gives you a new button called Use This Template. And when you click it, for example, you get this screen where you can now create a new repo which starts off with the same files and folders as the template. Make sure you create a private repo. I've already gone and done it. I've gone through the prelude part of things myself, so I'm not going to do it again. But basically, you make the template, you're going to name it My Meteor template, a private repo, and then you can download it, do meteor npm install, meteor npm run start, and then you should see in your terminal that you've got that little bcrypt warning message. It creates the default users, and then if we go to localhost 3000, like this, we see the template running. Okay, so that's basically where we've gotten to. Well, I've actually gotten through that part as well as the prelude part 3, which is to set up IntelliJ and ESLint. So I've set up a project called My Meteor Template. I've made it point to my private repo, and then to make sure ESLint is configured correctly, we want to open some JavaScript file and add a couple lines to the end to make sure that ESLint is running. So for example, you add a couple lines to the end, you see this red bar over on the right, and it says ESLint. Okay, so that's important. That if the error message starts with ESLint, then you know it's actually ESLint which is running, which has found the error. All right, so that's good. So we can now delete those lines. The error message goes away. And so we've got IntelliJ and ESLint all working. All right, so now it's time to start the WAD. And so the first step, it says, is to start the timer. So we'll start the timer. And then we want to create a branch called MyMeteor1 using GitHub Desktop and publish this branch to GitHub. So we'll create a branch called MyMeteor1 create, and then we'll publish this branch to GitHub. That just means now not only local in my local repo I have this branch, but also in the cloud at GitHub we've got this. We're not going to create pull requests in general for this code, even though it says you could. Second thing is we've got the application running. We want to log in as the test user john@foo.com and go to their list stuff page. So let's go here, log in as, well, heck, john@foo.com, and then the universal password. And we can go to the list stuff page, and you can see he's got these two items. That's the standard meteor application template situation. So the next thing it says is add a new column to the list stuff page called remove. When you're done, the page should look like this. Okay, so you can always click on these things to see in full screen. We're going to have this new column called remove. So we got to figure out how to do that. And the answer to that is, after kind of looking around, we see, all right, well, here is the page where we're actually laying out this table. So what we could do is do a propeller D to copy that column header, type remove, do propeller S to save it, then go look in the terminal, and we can see it's rebuilding and rerunning it. And so now if we go back to our template, we can see the page has been refreshed, and now we've got that remove column just like we're supposed to. That wasn't very hard. Next, edit the stuff item component to add a button that is displayed as a trash icon in each cell of the delete column. When you're done, the page should look like this. And we got this remove. In the remove column, we've got a little delete, little trash icon that's a button in each of those cells. So what I did, save time, I could have Googled semantic UI React button. In fact, that's exactly what I did. And then that took me to this page, and then I clicked on the type of button called icon to see, and then I clicked on this try it to display some code that shows me what this looks like in semantic UI React. So basically, this is what I kind of want. I want something that looks just like that, except with the trash icon. And what we can do, well, let's first go back here, and we're going to see, okay, so each row is rendered by calling this stuff item. And so we've got a table cell. So these are each of the cells. So we want to create a new table.cell. And then inside there, we want an icon. So if we actually go back here, like we could just do this, propeller C, and just stick that puppy right in there. Now I can see that button and icon have not been imported because they've got the squiggly marks underneath them. So what we're going to do is we make sure that we import them. Button, icon. Now the squiggly things go away, so that looks good. So let's go look and see everything's cool. It's rebuilding. And then we can go back here. It's refreshing. That looks great, except look, it's a world icon, not a trash icon. So we really need to find the trash icon. So let's go to icon, and then let's search for trash. And then we can see, oh, we got a few ones, right? So there's trash. Let's use that one. So if we go back to IntelliJ, instead of saying world, we can say trash. And I don't know, let's just put this on one line. And then we can go back and we refresh. Now we've got our trash icon. All right, so that's pretty good. Next, what we want to do is attach an on-click handler. So the idea here is, okay, we're rendering this icon, this button, but we want to have it do something when we click it. And so in semantic UI React, the standard thing you do for buttons to make them do actions is you attach an on-click handler that invokes a function that's going to accept the doc ID of the stuff item. So remember, each of these rows has a doc ID associated with it. Like if we go here, we can see that this .props.stuff._ID is the doc ID of this particular item. And so what we're going to end up wanting to do is call remove of the stuff's collection with that doc ID. And we can see we've got this doc ID right here. But the first thing we have to do is get a function that's going to be invoked when this button is clicked, so that we can implement that behavior. So the thing we're going to do is we're going to say onClick equals, and then we get this curly brace, okay? And let me just start by saying, if we want to have another behavior, let's have a function called remove item, and let's say this takes a doc ID, and it's going to do something. Let's just for start say console log item to delete is, and then doc ID, something like that. Okay, we've got this function which we want to have get a doc ID, and we'll just do console.log statement for right now. Okay, so our onClick handler, somehow we want to invoke this function, and so the standard idea in React when you're passing functions to these onClick handlers is you use the arrow function method to invoke the function. And we know that onClick handlers are always invoked with the event, with an event object which indicates which button was actually clicked. So the standard thing would be to have something like event goes to this dot remove item with event. Something like that. Okay? And let's see, these are just, okay. We just have to save, so remove those extra spaces. So let's actually see what happens when we invoke it like this. We go back here, and we see control meta J, and then we say, we click this, okay? What we can see is we've got that console log, item to delete is, and there was some kind of object. That's the event object, okay? But it turns out that we don't really care about the event object because we already know right now what the doc ID is associated with this particular row. It's that value right there. We could say this dot props dot stuff dot underscore ID. That's really what we want to pass into this remove item method. So if I save that out and I ignore these squiggles for a minute, and we go back here, and now we click this button again, I assume it's been refreshed. Maybe we should just check. Okay, so it's restarted. Click again, and lo and behold, we can see item to delete is, and then that looks exactly like a doc ID. I'm going to assume it's the doc ID. Okay, so it's cool. We've got the right behavior. What we don't have is no squiggly lines. And basically that squiggly line says event is defined but never used. Okay, well, what's awesome about JavaScript is that if we don't care about an argument that's being passed to a function, we can just say, hey, this is a function of no arguments. And if you invoke it with an argument, that argument will just be thrown away. It's very convenient, but very kind of alien to your typical Java, mentality where you say, wait a second, if the mechanism for on-click handling is always going to pass this event object, I can't just pass it a function which ignores the parameter that's passed to it. But in fact, in JavaScript, this is totally fine. And so now we've got a function of no arguments. It's going to not care about the thing that's it's actually passed with. And that no argument function is going to invoke this .remove item, but it will invoke it with the doc ID of the item that's displayed in this row, okay, which is exactly what we want. So now we've got no squiggly lines, and we've got no errors in the console. I mean, no errors in the shell, and then we can go to the template and we can invoke this, and we've got this doc ID. So we've got exactly what we want at this point. Okay, so now we've got the right kind of behavior in the window. But then now the only problem left, which is kind of a significant one, is that we have to actually invoke the remove function of the collection object. So if we have a collection object and we want to remove an item, we can call this remove function. And there's this thing about trusted and untrusted code, but what I want to say is when we're invoking this function on the client side, which is what's happening in this particular example, we have to pass in underscore ID, the doc ID of the item we want to remove. And that's exactly what we're doing, so everything's fine. And at a later point in time, we can go into the difference between trusted and untrusted code. But for right now, the basic idea is we're going to call remove, we're going to use an underscore ID, doc ID to do it. But the problem is, I don't see any collections in this component. The reason is because the collection is actually a part of this component. We have this dot stuffs. We're importing the collection object into this component. We use that. We subscribe to this subscription, which is going to populate this object with all of the stuff items. And then we do a find and a fetch to make an array of these things, which is what's actually mapped through inside this parameter. So what I'm going to say, kind of the elegant thing to do here, we could actually subscribe to the stuff collection every time we want to render a row in the table. But that seems a little crazy because that's subscribing a lot of times to this thing when really, we've got the populated stuffs object right here as a result of doing the subscription. We should just pass that thing into the component that needs it. And so that's the way that I'm recommending you think about this. And this is a general approach that you can use when you're trying to pass, just like we passed data about an individual stuff item into this subcomponent, let's pass the collection as well. So we can do that by saying stuffs equals stuffs. All right, now that that collection object right here, stuffs, okay, is being passed in and it's being bound to the parameter stuffs in the stuff item. So if we go to stuff item, we've got to say that we're now got this stuff objects, prop types dot object dot is required. Sorry. And then in here, we can say stuffs dot remove doc ID. Okay, and actually that's not quite right because it's a property, so we want to say this dot props dot stuffs dot remove. Okay. All right, so we'll log it to the console. Just well, no, we can. We'll leave it there for just a second, and we'll go check our console. It restarted. Everything looks fine. We'll go back here. We'll call remove, and bam, the item got removed. Here's the item to delete. It was removed from the collection. And this table is instantly refreshed because the underlying collection has been modified. And so that item is no longer in the collection. We could click this again and then the thing would be empty. Okay, so let's go back and see what else we need to do here. Okay, after you've finished implementing the remove operation, clicking on the trash icon will delete that item. and the row will be instantly removed from the list of items through the magic of meteor reactivity. Okay, so that's about 15 minutes and 15 seconds, 15 minutes. So we need to Control-C to stop meteor, and we'll stop our timer, and we'll commit and push this branch. Is there some kind of message they wanted us to say? Delete button implemented in n minutes, or actually it's the remove button. So I'll go here and say remove button implemented in 15 minutes. We'll say 16 minutes, what the heck. So commit, and then push to origin. All right, and now that branch is available. So let's go here. So that's basically it. Hope you've enjoyed this WOD, and I'll see you soon.